The February 10th, 2015 regular meeting of the Newport Beach City Council will now reconvene. Madam Clerk, can we have the roll call, please?
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Mr. City Attorney, do we have a closed session report?
There's no closed session report this evening, Mayor Salich.
Okay, will you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Curry, followed by the invocation by the Reverend Canon Cindy Evan Voorhees of St. James the Great Episcopal Church.
Please join me in the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Peace be with you. Imagine if you could speak fish. If winter had an identity crisis. If fiction wasn't fiction at all. If appetites were meant to be spoiled. If a fantasy world could be summoned up without a remote control. If time learned how to fly. If shooting stars got over their shyness. If the fountain of youth took appointments. If there was enough light in the day for work and play. If you treated everyone as if it were your first date. If you let your imagination run free. What if you could live vicariously through our city's soul? Govern from your heart and not the polls. Listen as if there was no tomorrow. Stop injustice with a magic wand. Create equal opportunity for all our citizens. Treated everyone as if they were the same color. Believed in a higher power that loves you unconditionally. Peace be with you.
Okay, the first item on our agenda is presentations this evening, and our first one is for our Junior Lifeguard of the Year. So is Abigail Clark here? Come forward, please. I'd like to read a proclamation honoring Abigail as the 2014 Junior Lifeguard of the Year. Whereas Abigail Clark was selected as the 2014 Junior Lifeguard of the Year for exemplifying the values of the Junior Lifeguard Program, and whereas Abigail adhered to the 3 R's, respectful, responsible, and representative, always be respectful of yourself, the ocean, and others, and be responsible in all you do, because as a junior lifeguard, you are a representative of the city of Newport Beach. And whereas Abigail's most prominent qualities are her dedication, eagerness to learn, and work ethic, she is enthusiastic to mentor and teach the younger junior lifeguards using empathy, integrity, and responsibility. And whereas Abigail excelled in the various academic aspects of the program, showed competence in the rigorous physical events, frequently encouraging others to give 100%. Abigail was always early and was first in line to help set up the day. And whereas Abigail's impact on the Newport Beach Junior Lifeguard Program is tangible and contagious, her presence in the program unquestionably improves the learning experience of her peers and contributes to the safety of the younger junior lifeguards. And whereas Abigail excelled as a safety aide, especially to the youngest children and junior lifeguards, Abigail assisted a panicked and crying D junior lifeguard through the surf line during a competition. Upon reaching the shore, Abigail's instructor asked her to sit with the frightened junior lifeguard. Abigail explained what had happened and recounted her own fear of large surf when she was younger. Abigail's reliability, patience, and empathy are the qualities that ultimately turned this potentially negative situation into a positive learning experience. These are the qualities that set her apart from her peers and make her such an exemplary representative of the City of Newport Beach Junior Lifeguard Program. Now, therefore, I, Edward Selich, Mayor of the City of Newport Beach, on behalf of the entire Newport Beach City Council, do hereby commend Abigail Clark for being the 2014 Junior Lifeguard of the Year. And I think Lifeguard Officer George Leeper wants to come forward at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. Abigail is one of 1,350 junior lifeguards that we had last summer. As you all know, 2014 was a big summer for us down at the beach at lifeguards and at junior guards. We celebrated our 30th anniversary last year, and Abigail was very deserving of this award. So thank you for honoring her tonight. I'd also like to invite all of the council members to come and check out the program at any time. Our first event is actually March 1st. That's the first swim test at Corona Del Mar Pool, and that's a big one. And we also have a scholarship for Abigail. So from the California Surf Lifesaving Association, on their behalf, I'd present this check for $250 to Abigail. Thank you, Council.
Let's make sure we do a photo up by the flags with Chief and Rob and Brian. Get up there. That's okay.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
The city provides a yellow sign-in card to assist in the preparation of the minutes. The completion of the card is not required in order to address the city council. If the optional sign-in card has been completed, it should be placed in the box provided at the podium. The City Council of Newport Beach welcomes and encourages community participation. Public comments are generally limited to 3 minutes per person to allow everyone to speak. Written comments are encouraged as well. The City Council has discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items. As a courtesy, please turn cell phones off or set them in the silent mode. Now is the time for City Council announcements or matters which council members would like placed on a future agenda.
Okay, are there any council announcements or matters for a future agenda? Councilman Piotr? Councilman Petros?
In the last 3 weeks, I believe it is, we've had reports of the construction along Mariners Mile. None of it's been good. Twice, a contractor nicked a gas line. It would be bad enough if that happened once, but it happened twice. Twice in, I think, the same week. Same line. And the same line. Then just last week, a contractor dug into the conduit of, or the lines of one of our traffic signals, affecting the ability to get traffic flow through Mariners Mile. As if it's not bad enough when there's K-rail all the way through there compromising the flow that's already heavy during the peak hours. Given those circumstances, and the fact that this is going to continue for some time, I am hopeful that my colleagues will join me in requesting somebody from the sanitation district come and speak to us about the circumstances about those upsets and give us some type of assurance about when this will be over and what we can expect on a go-forward basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Dixon?
I second that motion. No other comment. Thank you.
Councilman Muldoon?
whatever it takes, get the attention of Sanitation District. That's it.
Councilman Duffy?
I would agree with Councilman Petros wholeheartedly.
Councilman Curry?
Well, I sit on the Sanitation District Board, so I'll pick up the phone and dial the 7 digits that will bring somebody down here anytime we want them to come, and we'll have them here for the next meeting. But I have some other items, too. First of all, our City Hall here received an additional award, the 2015 American Society of Civil Engineers of Orange County Architectural Project Award. We were also the cover of Civil Engineering magazine with a very positive story titled Civic Beauty about our Civic Center. This is one of a long series of awards, including the 2015 Institute Honor Award for Interior Architecture from the American Institute of Architects, the 2014 Green Good Design Award from the Chicago Athenaeum, the 2014 Excellence in Structural Engineering Outstanding Project Award from the National Council of Structural Engineers, the 2014 Award of Excellence for New Construction for a Large Project from the Structural Engineers of California, the 2014 Excellence in Engineering Award from the Structural Engineering Association of Northern California, the 2014 Honor Award from the American Institute of Architects, 2014 Outstanding Planning Award in Urban Design from the American Planning Association, 2014 Chairman's Award from the Metal Construction Association, 2014 Ideas 2 Award from the American Institute of Steel Construction, and the 2013 American Public Works Association Project of the Year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just have a couple announcements here. Last Thursday evening, along with the rest of the City Council, we attended the Speak Up Newport Mayor's Dinner. It's an annual event put on by Speak Up Newport to where the mayor gets to discuss the state of the city. It was the largest turnout that Speak Up Newport's ever had, and it was a pretty successful evening. Last night, I had the opportunity to address our youth council. It's representatives from our high schools in town, and was able to discuss with them some of the important projects going on in the city and also answer some of their questions in terms of things that they're interested in. And I can tell you that we're lucky that we have such a engaged and involved youth council, and there's probably a city council person or two in that group in the future, I think. And then lastly, I'd like to bring to everyone's attention that we are going to have vacancies on our boards and commissions that are becoming available in June. And this year we're going to start the recruitment process a little bit early. The city clerk and our public information office is going to be publicizing the vacancies that are going to occur on June 30th. And I'll just read them to you here briefly. There's 2 seats open on the Board of Library Trustees, 1 seat on the Building and Fire Board of Appeals, 1 seat on the City Arts Commission, 1 seat on the Civil Service Board, 1 seat on the Harbor Commission, 2 seats on the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Commission, and 3 seats on the Planning Commission. Now, some of these seats are held by people that are up for reappointment, but it is an opportunity to get an application in and get on the list to be considered for the boards and commissions. All applicants have to be qualified electors of the city. You can't hold a paid office in city government. And the deadline for filing the applications is 4 o'clock on May the 13th. So we're getting the notice out a little bit early and hoping that we'll get more citizens that are interested in serving in our boards and commissions to apply. So again, it's 4 o'clock, May the 13th. You can get the application through the city's website. It's www.newportbeach.gov/vacancy. I think vacancy is the key word there. And if you need more information, you can contact the city clerk's office at 644-3005. Hey, Madam Clerk.
Public comments on consent calendar. This is a time in which council members may pull items from consent calendar, items 1 through 10 for discussion. Public comments are invited on consent calendar. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record. If any item is removed from the consent calendar by a council member, members of the public are invited to speak on each of the items up to 3 minutes per item. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine and will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. Council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the council members vote on the motion unless members of the city council request specific items to be discussed and or removed from the consent calendar for separate action.
Okay, thank you. Staff, I understand that you want to continue item number 3 to the next meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, no other items to pull or continue?
Right.
Okay. Okay, in order to facilitate public comment on the consent calendar, public comment will be taken first so that if any speaker raises a concern of interest to any council member, the council member may pull that item from the consent calendar when the council is polled. Does any member of the public wish to comment on any item on the consent calendar, items 1 through 10?
Mayor Selich and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. I would like to comment on item number 7, which is the new lease, 50-year lease on the Newport Elementary School playground, which exists on the city beach. In making these comments, I don't want to give the impression that I'm against schools. I am not. I don't want to give the impression I'm against children. I am not. And I don't even want to give the impression that I want you to vote against this. I just think that in the interest of transparency, this item needs a little bit of clarification. As it is presented on the agenda and in the staff report, most people reading this would think it's a routine renewal or extension of a contract that was entered into 50 years ago for another 50-year period. First point is that the existing contract apparently lapsed 5 years ago. So this is not an extension, it is a new contract. Second point I want to make is that for some number of years, the school has apparently been doing something different than the council in 1960 agreed to and bound themselves in the school and themselves to do for the next 50 years. The staff has put up here the slide, which is Exhibit B at the very end of the contract. This is from the new contract. As I read the 1960 contract, there is no explanation here of what these various lines are for, but the 1960 contract said that the playground area for the next 50 years was supposed to be confined to the area which is the extension of the block that the school district owns. I believe that's indicated by the inner white box that you see up there that starts at the edges of the building, goes out towards the ocean, and ends quite close to the surf line there, the inner white box. The new contract is proposing a different red box there, as I understand it. And if you look at that inner white box, it appears that over the years somebody decided that the area that the school had been licensed to use very close to the water was perhaps not usable. So instead of staying inside the box, they have extended the playground to the left and the right, to the east and the west. So for instance, in front of 13th Street, that was supposed to be a clear view out to the ocean. Instead, the playground has encroached into that. And similarly on the 14th Street, it's extended out of that. One would not know that that is what is happening here from reading the staff report. And I just thought it is important to be clear that you are renewing something different than the council agreed to 60 years ago. And I think the public should know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on the consent calendar?
Good evening. My name is Laura Curran. I'd like to comment on item number 9. Item number 9 is a request to initiate a zoning code amendment regarding appeal procedures, and it would direct staff to amend such that the appeal of a zoning change by the Community Development Director, Zoning Administrator, Planning Commission, and Hearing Officer would be exempt from paying a filing fee. So my question about this item is, this is the entire report, one page. So I'm reading a report which calls for waiver of fees, and we have some examples in our recent history. but we have no potential financial impact filed here. We have no information about the parameters. For example, I believe there was an example where Rush Hill called for an appeal of a waiver for fees paid by Todd Ridgway, worth, I believe, I can be wrong, almost $4,000. No personal interest, but clearly a potential conflict of interest to waive something for a former mayor and councilman. So are there parameters in which this will happen? Does the council member, do all of you only file for waivers of a code change without a fee when it's something where you're a named party? Or can you do this in any situation for any member of the public? Will we get information about the relationships and any fiduciary relationships or any potential investment in the properties where a zoning amendment is being considered? So, unfortunately, we are continuing our theme of staff reports and proposals where there is no line item information, there is no financial analysis presented or other analysis to help us understand it. And given that this is an important item with potential ramifications on many levels, I would ask you to consider pulling this item until we have a better understanding of what we're voting on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, do you mind if I chime in on that?
No, go ahead.
So this is an initiation of a change. There's a long process after that. It has to go to the Planning Commission, then ultimately you folks. We expect to provide the Planning Commission and the City Council with the kind of information that Ms. Coran is speaking about. This is just whether or not to initiate it, and that's our code process.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the consent calendar? Please come forward.
Good evening, members. My name is Nathan Holthauser. I'm a resident on the Newport Beach Peninsula. I'm also a commercial real estate broker within the community. I want to comment on item number 10. I understand that this item, it's the Balboa Peninsula Overlay District in regards to the modifying standards and regulations related to existing eating and drinking establishments, restaurants, bars, lounges, etc. The comment I want to make, I know that it's in the preliminary stages of discussion. I represent a number of commercial owners on the peninsula, both in the Balboa Village District, as well as the McFadden Square. Many of those property owners, one of them who's here tonight, who's been in the business for over 40 years, multi-generational business, has some very, very strong concerns about what this will mean for property values. I understand that there's regulations that already exist for these types of establishments, but the questions are, what is prompting the recommendation for this, and what does this mean moving forward for these types of regulations? The bottom line concern is that properties are purchased commercially with certain types of expectations for rents, returns. Property values are based upon capitalization rates and income, and a lot of those property owners, when I brought this to their attention, over 10 of them had some concerns. So I just want to make the comment moving forward with the discussion that the property owners be taken into consideration, not just the businesses themselves, because the economic viability of those tenants and the property owners will be affected greatly. So I'm open to discuss any of these matters with the council over this, I think it's called a study session. I can give you the overall feedback based upon what my experience has been, both representing the buyers, the sellers, and the current owners of these properties, and just want to make that comment while you guys are doing your study session. Thank you.
Okay, again, this is something that we're just initiating to get scheduled for a study session, so all those things will be discussed at that time.
I, too, would like to know what's causing this for the Balboa Overlay District. I see here that we're looking to include performance standards and regulations specific to Balboa Peninsula in order to address the effects of on-sale alcoholic beverage service and to direct staff to bring this matter back to the City Council. It sounds like there's an objective here, and I don't know what that is because I don't know what the problem is. It hasn't been brought up. I'm unaware of it. I've went this weekend and spoke to as many business owners as I could on Balboa Peninsula. They too were unaware of any problems that would warrant government coming in and adding performance standards and regulations to their businesses. This is a significant reach of government into businesses and in a very specific area, only on Balboa Peninsula. And it's unclear why, if it's good for Balboa, it wouldn't be good for the rest of the city. So I think there's a lot of confusion. This seems to be very vague. I don't understand it, nor did any of the other business owners, not only what prompted this, but also what the solutions are to a problem that is simply not clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Denise Oberman, resident of the Balboa Peninsula. I've been fortunate to be involved in some of the discussions leading up to the proposal, which has been spearheaded by Mayor Pro Tem Dixon. Thank you. And I would, if I may, just respond briefly to that gentleman to add some color for the public as to the reason for bringing this to the case. First of all, the overlay concept came up as a result of a clear, ever-increasing documented set of problems associated with the overconcentration of on-sale alcohol establishments in this particular area. So there have been significant, repeated, 24/7 nuisance problems. There have been incidences, safety incidences, associated, and I'm going to be perfectly candid, with behavior that's been uncontrolled with ever-increasing volume associated with more and more alcohol establishments in this area, and sadly, behavior that comes along with drinking too much without the appropriate controls. So I think I do agree with the gentleman that just spoke that there should be, in addition to looking at the overlay, this area does have a concentration of problems that have been derived from the overconcentration of these establishments with the behavior that's coming out of them. So the performance standards, nuisance definitions, enforcement standards, I do agree those should be applicable across the city and probably across a variety of business uses. As far as the need to have a couple of things, concentrated look at use permits in an area such as the peninsula where there's overconcentration, I do support, and I believe that is going to come about and be discussed in the study session. I also think that there needs to be a concerted effort to communicate and enforce in areas where problems impacting public safety and nuisance problems have manifested themselves. So the police department needs particular direction as to how to allocate its resources. And that's another reason that I think that the overlay, or this area in particular, needs to be looked at in order to provide direction for a change in policy. So I support a study session looking at the overlay to address how to manage overconcentration and its related impacts. In this case, overconcentration is not desirable. It shouldn't have any economic impact on responsible operators or property values that can effectively meet use and management requirements, operational requirements, and also manage their clientele. So this is not an uncommon policy direction. There are a number of other cities that have this sort of thing in combination with nuisance and enforcement things. So it does need to be fair. And I support the progression of this along with looking at nuisance and code enforcement as a package to address the problems associated with this overconcentration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, Councilmember Muldoon, do you have anything to pull?
I do not, but I have to recuse myself on item number 9.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, 8, excuse me.
Item number 8, recusal on item number 8. Okay, Councilmember Duffy?
I have none.
Councilmember Curry?
No items to pull, but I'll register an abstention recusal on item number 8. I have a stockholder conflict.
Okay. Councilmember Piotr? Councilmember Petros?
None, but I would acknowledge item number 6. Good job, Public Works, getting that done. This is a recommendation out of the Bicycle Master Plan.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Dixon?
I have none.
And I have none. So now entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
Just real quick before you vote, in regards to Mr. Muldoon's conflict, the reason is it's a potential source of income to his employer, and that's the reason for the recusal, just for the record.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I move the balance of the consent calendar, items 1 through 10, with the exception of item number 8, a recusal by Councilmember Curry, and item number 8, a recusal by Councilmember Muldoon, and item number 3 has been continued to the next meeting. Is there excuse me. It's your job.
It is. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, please vote.
The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Okay, next item is public comments on non-agenda items. Madam Clerk?
Public comments are invited on non-agenda items generally considered to be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record.
Okay, any public comments on non-agenda items? Please come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Merle Masheri, and I'm here tonight representing my grassroots organization, Residents for Responsible Desalination, to invite you and the people of Newport Beach to a town hall meeting being held March 5th at 7 p.m. at John Eder Elementary School. Our topic, and we're just over the bridge from you, our topic is Poseidon on our shores. As you are well aware, the Orange County Water District is poised to enter into an agreement with Poseidon Resources to build a $1 billion plant. And all of the expenses would fall to the ratepayers, and we're concerned about this. And this will happen. They plan to build the plant, then they will purchase all the water, and then all of us will have to take it, whether we need it or want it or not. We strongly support discussion on the alternatives to desalination, conservation, retention, reclamation, as being every bit as valuable and reliable, and at 1/3 to 1/2 the cost of desalination. Rainfall in January in California has totaled 60 trillion gallons, believe it or not. Over 2/3 of this water washed back into the ocean. That's unacceptable in today's technology. The largest water purchaser in the Orange County Water District is the Irvine Water District, and they oppose the desalination plan. We have asked Director Pierce Swan of the IRWD to join us on March 5th to explain and discuss issues with us, primarily why Poseidon is too costly and why there are better, less costly ways to serve our water needs and save the ratepayers the burden of a bonded indebtedness for the next 30 years. I'm also proud to announce that this meeting will be streamed by a team from Residents for Responsible Desalination that broke through the window of opaqueness thrown up by the Orange County Water District that has steadfastly refused to stream their meetings to the open public and to their deliberations on Poseidon to the public. Led by directors Steve Sheldon, Sean DeWayne, and Dennis Bilodeau, the voting majority professes that their nearly $300 million organization cannot afford to stream. And besides, the public isn't interested, and they're doing nothing wrong. We've ended this secret society with an iPhone and a tripod. So we invite you to come and join us and say hello and wave at the camera. And I have a flyer here for you that I'll leave, I guess, with the city clerk. And thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Michael Glenn, Balboa Peninsula. I wanted to bring up once again the Explore Ocean and the parking lot on Balboa and Palm Street. This property is valued at somewhere between $7 and $10 million. We are leasing this property to them for the total of $2,500 for 7 years. That's less than $360 a year. That's less than $1 a day. I don't know where you can get a $10 million property for $1 a day, but I will restate my offer in hopes that this will come back to a public bid. I will pay you 10 times the amount on that contract for the same deal. And I believe that's very low. I believe that you can get 100 times that. I'm doing this in an effort to bring it to a public bid because I believe that is fair. The last council, as one of their last items, all 4 people who left voted that they should give this property away. Again, this is less than what they would be paying as property tax if we were to have given them this property completely. So I'd like you to revisit this. We have elected a council that is hardcore conservative. I hope that's what people voted for. And if you could revisit this, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next commenter, please.
Mayor Selich and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. As you may recall, at your last meeting, you appointed 4 citizens to a newly reorganized finance committee, and I said I thought it was improper to do that without formally advertising the vacancies on that commission. In fact, I said that I thought it was contrary to state law. And as you may recall, I tried to use this segment of the council meeting to reply to a comment that our city attorney made to the effect that the statewide requirement requiring advertisement of unscheduled vacancies does not apply to newly created positions. I was told I was out of order, and I promised to come back tonight to complete my comment, so I am going to do that. Not only are there numerous examples of other agencies that acknowledge that the state requirement to advertise applies to newly created positions, but what I was about to do was to hold up this, which is our own city clerk's local appointment list. The mayor earlier read off some vacancies that are going to occur this year. Through your council policy, we advertise these positions, make them known to the public. But according to the state law, this list has to be prepared by December 31st of each year, and it announces the openings that will be occurring during the year. There is no state requirement to further advertise these. This is the list, this is the announcement, the advertisement of the normal scheduled openings. Anything that does not appear on this list, whether it's a new vacancy that occurs by death, resignation, firing, or by the creation of a new position, is an unscheduled vacancy, and the state is very vigilant that those be advertised so that the public knows them. But it's not a narrow legalistic argument, it's really a common sense argument. Without advertising the newly created positions, you, I, nobody in this audience has any idea who, reading the Daily Pilot, somebody that you've never heard of, might be highly qualified and say, I would like to serve in that position. That's why the state requires the advertisement. It's legally required. It's also a common sense thing to do. The other comment I wanted to make and didn't have time to is your last meeting. I have a real problem with the concept of having 3 council people on the committee and then 4 people who are acting as representatives for individual council people, which I kind of heard was the intent of the new arrangement. And I would just like to point out that we have not only this Maddie Act about appointments, we also have the Brown Act about the public's business being done in public. That arrangement is an invitation for what is called a hub and spoke or a serial meeting, where a council member who is not on the committee is through his intermediary communicating to 3 other council people his position on an issue, and then that position is being communicated back. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Carl Cassidy, Honorable Mayor Selich, council members, and respected staff. I'd like to affirm what Mr. Moser had to say. I sent public comment on this item to each of you and the city clerk today. Rather than reiterate what Mr. Moser just said, we wanted to give the city attorney, now that he's had some time to review the facts and look at the law, rather than just speak off the cuff, to maybe give the council an actual legal opinion based upon the facts, and knowing how you did arrive at these 4 individuals, and knowing how you dismissed the 1 individual that was never on a scheduled vacancy. So I think not giving having rewritten my notes and provided them to him, I think they speak for themselves. And I think, not being an attorney, but I think the law is pretty clear, and not having any written advice to you to the otherwise, that he's had proper time and fairness to consider. I think the council has no choice but to do as Mayor Selledge did in the normal course of business, as in the charter requires you, is to advertise these vacancies and make this an open, transparent meeting as to how you arrived at these candidates and how you dismissed qualified candidates that did apply, so that we know that when there are scheduled and unscheduled vacancies, that city business is not done behind closed doors, and the public's business is in fact done in public. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harp, do you want to comment on the memo received from Mr. Cassidy?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mayor Selledge. Just to kind of recap what those allegations were, there are 4 allegations that Mr. Cassidy raised in his letter, and some of those were repeated by Mr. Mosher. The first allegation was that the City Council violated City Council Policy A2 by not following the appointment process provided for in that policy. City Council Policy A2 provides an appointment process, but it also provides for an alternative process to be provided in the formation of the committee if the City Council elects to do so. And that's precisely what resolution number 2015-5 did, and it created the Finance Committee. It created its own process, so there was no violation of that council policy. The second allegation that was raised by Mr. Cassidy is that the City Council violated the Brown Act through a series of serial meetings to come to an agreement on who is appointed to the Finance Committee. Now, what the Brown Act provides is that it excludes from its purview individual contacts between City Council members and any other person. As is referenced basically in resolution number 2015-5, each council member that's not serving on the Finance Committee was to appoint 1 resident to serve on the Finance Committee. The communications one-on-one with the people that the finance or those council members decided to consider to be candidates for the committee, that's not a violation of the Brown Act, because those one-on-one communications are permitted. And then the entire City Council considered who was being proposed and basically ratified those appointments. So once again, there's not a violation of the Brown Act in that regard. And the Maddie Act is an interesting government code section. It basically has a few different provisions, but the provision that's being referenced here by Mr. Mosher and Mr. Cassidy really relates to unscheduled vacancies. So if a board member suddenly resigns in the middle of their term, then what the Maddie Act provides is that you should give notice to people to let the public know that that position is available. And it applies, in essence, to when there is that unscheduled vacancy. It does not apply to the formation of a new committee. And so in this instance, the Maddie Act would not be applicable to these facts and circumstances. And then the final issue relates to whether or not all the people that were appointed to the Finance Committee were registered voters or not. And because there was no waiver of the provision in the resolution related to that point, if someone was not registered to vote at the time that the City Council made its decision, then that appointment would be invalid. I just recently received some information about whether one of the people considered for the appointment, whether they were registered at the time the appointment was made or not. There seems to be some conflict between what the Register of Voters has and maybe some other issues. So we're going to look into that one more time. But there is one person who may not have been registered to vote in the city who was appointed to the Finance Committee, and we'll be taking another look at that to see whether or not they were or not. But if they were not registered, then it would be a technical violation of the resolution. So that appointment would be invalid if they weren't registered to vote. But that's something we're going to need to take another look at. If they were not registered to vote, then basically we'd go through the process of considering someone for that position. It wouldn't prohibit that person from being reappointed or appointed to the Finance Committee, but we may have a technical violation that we'll have to take a look at.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other public comments? Please come forward.
Mayor, council members, Denise Oberman. I'm here on my own behalf and also on behalf of a coalition of concerned citizens, including residents of Newport Beach and also other stakeholders who are regular visitors to the beach. Since there is effectively no process relative to the fire rings issue, I'm here to try to comment and bring to the eye of the public the issue of the fire rings and to make sure that the council and staff has clarity as to what the community feels is an extremely important issue. There has not been a public process of any legitimacy. We were told anecdotally that there were a series of 7 alternatives, and I say we, being the citizenry at large, on the city website. We reviewed these alternatives, and 4 of them were so inarticulate and didn't have accompanying maps that we really didn't know what the city was referencing, and the others were flat out unacceptable. I'll get to the points as to the acceptability or no in just a minute. So then we endeavored, through speaking with people in the city, and also through direct physical observation, to attempt to understand what those scenarios as they were represented actually meant. So we went to visit the sites, and I say we because a number of citizens went, and when we went a week ago Sunday, there was a certain configuration and a certain number of rings in Corona del Mar and Balboa, near the Balboa Pier, respectively. When we went the next Tuesday, right before the Air Quality Management District came, there was yet another number of rings in consideration. So how on earth are the citizens supposed to evaluate the situation? I am here to ask that the council retract that. We also, and I just would like to interrupt myself by thanking Councilmember Curry, Mayor Selich, Councilwoman Dixon for meeting with us, and also Councilman Muldoon, Councilman Petros, and Councilman Piotr for speaking to us on the phone regarding this issue. We appreciate that. So to kind of cut to the chase, the citizens have gotten together both individually and also with their community associations, and there are basically 2 types of scenarios that the people of this city will consider acceptable. One is a combination of wood burning and charcoal fuel, and the count would be approximately 55 total, of which 30 would be at the Balboa Pier, and the remainder would be in Corona del Mar. In the footprint described as the boundary footprint of where the fire rings were located previously, so that there is no extension of adverse impact, either with environment or nuisance or public safety to the surrounding residential neighborhoods. So the second alternative, was that comprehensible? The second alternative, and again, these are compromises that the community is willing to make, is to go with all wood burning, which we've basically been told we have to accept. So there's no process. How am I going to continue to express myself? We finalized, the city submitted. So where am I to go? Where's the cure? Where is my process? Where are mine and the community's administrative rights? My 3 minutes is up. I'm happy to continue. Obviously, my time in this venue is done, but we have the right. We have the right, and please give us the respect and the entitlement to go through a public process and to not ignore us and already have submitted. We find out before all this has come in and there's been a process that the city has just gone ahead, categorically exempted this whole fire rings project from CEQA, which is specious at best, and also submitted alternatives to the Coastal Commission, which will have serious adverse consequences to the community. So I ask also that the city retract or amend in the name of clarification and refinement its application to the Coastal Commission. These are our rights. This is our request to you, people who are supposed to be our representatives. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Next speaker, please. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Laura Curran. For the public, just to talk about the fire rings briefly, there are now 9 options that have been proposed. If you'd like to see them, you can write to the city and ask them. They'll provide the maps. But one thing that you will see, I went down to Corona Del Mar. Not only do these bring back wood fire rings, and it's still not clear whether it would be 30 or 60 based on what was voted on a couple of weeks ago, but we'll move on from that. But the proposals in Corona Del Mar, for example, what I've seen, create more density at the top of the beach for fire rings, so there's more physical space being occupied near the grass area, and more density or fire rings down near the shoreline. And then the fire rings now extend south past the lifeguard stand. So the question is, in a narrow beach like Corona Del Mar, we're restricting the space that we have for volleyball and just for people to take their beach chairs and hang out. So some people may be okay with that, some people may not, but people need to understand that not only are we looking at bringing back wood, which you may or may not like, but we're also looking at changing the physical footprint. So it almost feels like eminent domain by our own city on the residents. So that's the major issue that I have with the proposals. In addition to the fact that when the maps are presented, it really doesn't show us where the physical placement was in the past and where are we going. So like in finance, you do a build-up. Where are we now? What are we adding? And where are we going? Those maps would be very helpful. And that would help the public feel like they have a clear picture of what is being proposed and what the impact will be if we make further changes. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll close that portion. Mr. Kiff, would you like to comment, not on the individual alternatives, but just on the process we're going through and,
I would.
and why we have the alternatives?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just for the public's edification, we put up all 7 plans on the website. I checked the links that very evening, and this was now probably 3 weeks ago. Every one of them works. Every one of them has a map. And the map is detailed. There's a cover page, and then you keep thumbing down through that cover page, and you can see exactly where the fire rings are supposed to go in each scenario, including the overlay of the existing footprint. So as to the process, remember with the Coastal Commission, it's very iterative. Iterative, if I didn't say that clearly enough. We submit something. They tell us it's not complete. We submit more. They tell us it's still not complete. We submit more, and then finally it's complete, and then they set a public hearing. So they asked us specifically to see other plans that we had looked at or considered or could remotely fit on our beaches. And they asked specifically for 60 wood ring plans. Plans with 60 wood rings. So there are probably 4 or 5 different iterations other than the one that the council recommended. And that is part of the alternatives process that the Coastal Commission looks at. So the Coastal Commission is not likely to act on this before June. So in terms of the public's ability to weigh in, we have a community engagement site. It's been up now for about 2.5 weeks. It's up. We extended the period through through February 28th here. We'll take all of that information and send it to the Coastal Commission. Anyone can email the Coastal Commission at any time or call them. You can participate in the public hearing. And then what I would expect to see is the Coastal Commission will act on a plan and then return it to the City Council to see if it's acceptable to the City Council. That's kind of how those things work. It happened with Sunset Ridge Park. They changed our original plan. Happened with Marina Park. They changed our original plan. It's kind of how this works. I wish it were better, but that's how it goes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll now go on to oral reports from City Council on committee activities. Councilmember Piotr.
None.
Councilmember Petros?
On the 2nd of February at the community room, the aviation committee met. We had heard a report on the changes in air travel, minor increases in passengers, and with a corresponding reduction in overall flights, meaning that the planes are being filled by the carriers. It was a modest report on the activity. The biggest issue that we've addressed was the retirement of Alan Murphy as the general manager of the John Wayne Airport. He was a very good, honest negotiator on behalf of the county. He represented their position well, but was also a very, very good neighbor to the city of Newport Beach, and he will be missed. It was acknowledged that he could have retired much earlier, yet he wanted to stick around to see the settlement agreement completed. So we are very grateful for his efforts there. Tomorrow at 4 p.m. at Explore Ocean, there will be another meeting of the Balboa Village Advisory Committee. Mayor Pro Tem Dixon and I will be there with a full agenda on items for the revitalization of that committee. Please join us at Explore Ocean. And on the 18th, the Tidelands Committee will be meeting here at the city as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Dixon?
Yes, last week on February 4th was a meeting of the Balboa Village community regarding the residential permit program, and staff was there, did a fine job in presenting. I think it's one of the largest town halls that we've seen, filled the upstairs at the pavilion, Balboa Pavilion. So it was a lot of good input by the community on this specific residential parking area on the peninsula near Balboa Village. So we'll be awaiting staff's report back to us after the final voting comes in. When do you think that might be, Kim?
It won't be until March. We're sending out ballots.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Muldoon?
None.
Councilmember Duffy?
None.
Councilmember Curry?
As some of you know, for the past several years, I've been privileged to represent the coastal cities on the Orange County Parks Commission, and I was honored this week to have my colleagues on the Park Commission re-elect me to a term as chairman.
Okay. I'd just like to remind everyone that we're going to have 4 community outreach meetings on the local coastal plan. The first one is tomorrow night at Oasis. And Kim, what room is that in? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
There'll be signs up. There'll be a lot of people there. So it's all these meetings start at 7 o'clock. They go from 7 to 9 p.m. On the 18th, we'll be having one in the community room at the Civic Center across the foyer there. On the 25th of February, it'll be out in the West Newport Peninsula area, and it'll be in the old City Council chambers. And then on March the 4th, the session focusing on commercial properties, and that will also be in the old City Council chambers. And again, all those are from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the evening. Okay, on to public hearings. Our first public hearing is item number 11, a zoning code amendment to modify the standards and process for reviewing building additions to nonconforming structures. Staff?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Selich, members of the council. I'm Kim Brandt, Community Development Director. Our very first public hearing item for you tonight is an amendment to the city's zoning code, which contains all the development regulations for development or construction that occurs on private property. And tonight we're going to give you a little bit of what I would call zoning 101, and hopefully at the end of our presentation you will understand what a non-conforming structure is, and as we look at it in relationship to the city's regulations for development. But the topic this evening is looking at a potential discrepancy in applying the city's non-conforming regulations to residential structures, and that there is a discrepancy when you're reviewing an application or a person's home that is rather small in relationship to its lot and does not contain a garage. So Assistant Planner Ben Zadiba has an excellent presentation for you, and with that I will turn it to Ben.
Thanks, Kim. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Ben Zadiba, Assistant Planner. I'm just going to give you a brief overview and, as Kim said, give you a little bit of zoning 101. So first off, what is nonconforming? I'm sure most, if not all of you, have heard of the term nonconforming. Just to put it in a simple term, so if a home is built in compliance with zoning and development standards that are in place at the time it's constructed, and then the zoning and development standards change subsequent to that construction, the home is considered no longer fully compliant due to changes made to that code, or rather, the home may be considered no longer fully compliant due to changes made. So for instance, if a setback changes on a property and the home is already constructed into that setback area, it's then considered non-conforming. So how does our zoning code treat that? We have section 20.38.040, which is the topic of this discussion. It presents the criteria for the continuation, maintenance, and expansion of the non-conforming structures. It also is intended to encourage increased conformance over time. And it further stipulates that expansion should be limited to a maximum of 50% of the gross floor area, that's including the garage, within any 10-year period. So how does that actually apply to a property? If you look at the cube diagram I gave you up there, we allow 50% of the existing gross floor area. So you notice in this particular instance, there is no garage. So adding that garage substantially limits the amount of livable addition that a person can add, because you're then encumbering the property by adding a 400 square foot garage approximately for 2-car required parking, which again limits the amount of addition for livable purposes to whatever is remaining from that initial 50% that was taken from the existing structure. So just to give you a little bit of background, I'm not going to go over each of these meetings. However, we did meet 3 times with the Planning Commission to review this particular item. On December 4th, 2014, they identified a potential option, and that's what you have before you today. That's the recommendation that's been presented in the ordinance and in the administrative draft. So what does this actually do? What is the change going to do for these properties? In this case, we allow you to add a garage, limiting the size based on the number of spaces, and consider that existing when allowing an addition. And so you'll be able to take 50% of the added garage as a portion of the existing square footage to be the total addition. Furthermore, we're allowing a process, or in placing a process that would be reviewed by a modification permit that would go to the Planning Commission to allow up to 75% of that existing square footage plus the new garage. So in a nutshell, this really helps to eliminate the inequities when a property does not have a garage that is existing, allows them to develop the property in an equitable manner with the properties that are in the same zoning district and have similar zoning standards. So really it's eliminating the discrimination of a small structure on a property that's non-conforming. So the recommendation you have before you is to conduct a public hearing, find the adoption is not subject to CEQA, and then introduce a council ordinance and pass on to the second reading. And I will let Kim kind of elaborate on some comments we've received.
Just to follow up, we did receive some written comments from Mr. Mosier in regards to the ordinance, and he made some indications about clarity and that perhaps that some additional language would be necessary for the ordinance. We did review it with the city's attorney's office. We do feel that the Planning Commission's recommendation was clear in its intent, but that being said, we also felt that there was some additionally modified language that we're proposing to be added into tonight's ordinance. It does not change the intent of the ordinance. It just merely clarifies it. The modified ordinance should have been presented to you as part of your packet, and we had it in the foyer as well. But we don't believe that the clarifying language requires any further review by the Planning Commission. It's just clarifying again what the intent of the Planning Commission's recommendation to you.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any requests to speak from anybody on the council. Mr. Piotr?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kim, it talks about a 50% maximum, but that's assuming that in this case, a house is not going to be brought back into conformance. So if it's in the setback line or something like that, then you're talking about not counting the garage, and then the 50% would be calculated a different way. But if it's actually going to be brought into conformance, let's say it's not into conformance because it doesn't have a garage, the 50% limitation doesn't apply if they're going to, in effect, bring it into compliance.
That is exactly correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other council comments? Mayor Pro Tem Dixon?
Yes, I'm appreciative of staff and how you've worked this out. It's been a long process for the applicant. I went and visited the property today, and I'm pleased to know that we will be adding, even if it's private parking, in a structure that does not include parking today, and that's a real issue, certainly on the peninsula. So I am in favor of this change. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, I'll open it up for public comment, public hearing. Please come forward.
Mayor Selich and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. This is the thickest agenda staff report you have tonight because of the long history this had going back and forth through the Planning Commission. It was actually only at their last meeting they saw how staff was planning to insert it into the zoning code. And that was not given really close attention. And the point I tried to make about clarity was a small but I think important one. I didn't know that there was a copy of a modified thing in the lobby, so I haven't had a chance to see that. But I would like to thank the staff for making an effort to achieve clarity in the way we modify code. It's always very difficult because one thing can contradict another. And the insertion that was proposed before the Planning Commission, they just saw a little piece of the code, and it was hard to see that it didn't fit in well with the rest of it. So I hope it's been placed in a position that works better. Thank you.
Thank you.
W.R. Dildine, live on the Balboa Peninsula in the 300 block east. I'm glad to see this finally got this far. I picked up a copy of the report and I find my name as attending 4 different planning commission meetings. I have a structure right across the street from me that's in the same position as this one. It was a commercial, or it's still in commercial. It had an abatement extension until November the 30th, 21, as a result of the ordinance that did not allow commercial in residential zones. I think this is a good thing. They're the only 2 structures that I know of in that area that this would apply to. I've been there since '65, and they're both well-maintained buildings in very good shape. One concern, what about encroachments in the front yard, side yard, rear yard? Are they done away with in projects now? Is it possible? That was brought up earlier. My concern there is, after having built 3 structures in 1965, took out the permits in December, I have discovered in the last year that those 3 buildings are legal non-conforming. The plans, and according to the deed of the property, they were all 30 by 60 foot, or 30 by 80 foot lots, rectangles. They're parallelograms. The license surveyor that come out and staked them reduced the building by 6 inches, making the garages non-conforming. And consequently, they're kind of screwed on the property, and they're not, the side yard setbacks are not correct. Plus, I've had the lot surveyed. There's a discrepancy in my recorded survey and the Cressley maps. I'm on 3 inches into your property. In the planning department, I was told that's no longer my property. It belongs to the city. Thank you. I do support what's been presented. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Howdy, my name is John Loomis. I'm with 30th Street Architects. Our address is 2821 Newport Boulevard, Newport Beach. I'm the architect for the applicants that sort of started this whole thing. And this has been quite a long road, but I will say that the process works. It's a very successful road, and we feel very strongly, the applicants and myself, that this is a fair solution, and that's what this is all about, fairness. Ordinances are difficult to write and to cover all bases, and we happen to slip into a hole. And this is a good solution for to have fairness for everybody. It's not perfect, but staff has really done an excellent job, and I think the Planning Commission picked the right alternative. We support approval of this item, and we appreciate your help in this regard. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Sharon Horman, and I live at 419 East Balboa Boulevard. And I'd just like to take an opportunity to thank everyone involved in trying to correct this issue. This process has definitely been a learning experience for me and my husband. For the past 19 months, my emotions have been up and down like a roller coaster. I have shed many tears over this whole process. But I think this new zone code amendment is very fair, and so I'm asking that the City Council vote yes on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Entertain a motion for staff approval with the language as modified.
Mayor Selich?
Yes.
I would move that the adoption of the code amendment is not subject to CEQA pursuant to the sections notified. I would move the introduction of ordinance 2015-3, allowing the city clerk to read that title if need be. And that's my motion.
Okay, any discussion? If not, please.
And I would clarify as amended by staff most recently.
Okay. The voting screen up.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the title for ordinance number 2015-3, an ordinance of the City Council of City of Newport Beach approving an amendment to Title 20 of the Newport Beach Municipal Code, revising the amount of floor area additions allowed to non-conforming structures. Are you a thumbs up, Mayor?
My screen's not up.
Okay, but are you go or no go?
Pardon me?
Do you approve or no approve? The
Yes.
motion carries
Aye.
unanimously 7-0.
Okay. Another glitch with the electronic system. Okay, item number 12, the annual monitoring review of the development agreement number 14, Newport Coast.
Thank you, Mayor Selich, members of the council. This public hearing is for the annual review of the Newport Coast Development Agreement, and this is a rather unique agreement that the city has with the Irvine Company in that it includes the annexation or pre-annexation agreement that the city entered into with the Irvine Company prior to annexation. And then another component of the agreement was to include what was known at that time as the Irvine Coast Development Agreement with the County of Orange, which was then incorporated into this agreement. Since the annexation occurred to the city of Newport Beach back in 2001, there's nothing to report in relationship to the actual annexation action. That has occurred, and that there's nothing more to report in that regards. And the public benefit component of the development agreement that the county had with the Irvine Company was completed. And back in 2005, 2006, the county came to the conclusion that all the public benefits that were required as part of the original Irvine Coast Development Agreement had been completed, and there were no further need for review by the county of that agreement because the completion of the public benefit agreement, or the public benefit component of the agreement. So we have been, since the city has taken on the responsibility of preparing an annual report, we are more or less just reporting on the development activity that's occurring within the Newport Coast area. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ben for some additional details. But what's contained within your staff report is just what activity occurred within 2013 in relationship to the Newport Coast area.
Thanks, Kim. Again, Mayor Pro Tem, Council Members, Ben Zadiba, Assistant Planner. Just not much to add to what Kim had already stated. Just wanted to provide you some overview as far as the area of the concern, or the area that the development agreement looks at. So this was included in that annual monitoring report that was attached to your staff report. It just shows the boundary of the approximate development area. You'll notice that there are several planning areas within the Newport Coast Plan Community, and as Kim indicated, there are nearly developed out. There have been limited development projects over the years, as indicated by the staff report and the annual monitoring report that was received by you. So as a recommendation, I recommend you conduct a public hearing, find the action is exempt from CEQA, find that the applicant, which is the Irvine Company, has demonstrated good faith compliance, and receive and file the 2013 annual monitoring report. We are available for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. Any public comments on this item? Please come forward.
Mayor Selich and members of the council, my name again is Jim Mosier. I submitted some fairly extensive written comments on this earlier today, which I did not see in the lobby, and I don't know if you received them. I hope that you did. And I would suggest that this item be continued to a future meeting. We've heard this as an annual report. It actually was due last September. What is happening, what could happen in Newport Coast was at that time an area of topic of great interest in the city because of Measure Y and the claims made on both sides about this. Hearing this report would have been an opportunity to clarify those issues. It's still a matter of interest to me what the truth is about Newport Coast. As I said in the written comment, there's some uncertainty, it seems to be, even about what we're referring to by Newport Coast. As I read the development agreement, and I could be wrong, I often am, that we are reviewing tonight, it refers to the entire annexation area that includes not just the area that Ben showed you on the map here, but it also includes Newport Ridge. And we were told in connection with Measure Y there were going to be changes in the housing in Newport Ridge. To the best of my knowledge, in the many years that we've had this development agreement, which has a requirement in it that the Irvine Company report to you each year on the development, and the city set a fee for them to do that reporting and administering, we have never had a report on what is happening in Newport Ridge. I don't know how you can say that they're in good faith compliance if we've never heard what's happening there. Now, if I'm wrong about that, I would like to be corrected. Next, as you may recall, all of the candidates who were running for council last fall, all but one of them bought into the idea that the public was facing a trade-off between development at Newport Center or the addition of 356 pre-approved homes and 3 shovel-ready pre-approved island hotels that were going to go in Newport Coast. This report appears to contradict that. It has, if you look here in, it's hard to refer to this, it seems to be page 12-19, there's an attachment 3. It's now kind of stale data. I think this is coming from a 2011 report. We haven't had an update in the last 4 years. And it's telling us how many hotel accommodations there were in 2011 and how many the Irvine Company is telling us they expected to build out. Those numbers are the same. They apparently had no plan to add any hotels, and the number that they could have added is quite different than the public was told in this table called Exhibit 3. I think you have contradictory information, you have incomplete information here, and I don't think you can make the findings you're supposed to make tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for questions or motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would move the approval of the items here, the recommended actions B, C, and D.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion or comments? Not, please vote.
The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Okay, move on to current business. Item number 13, approval of agreement with Ferguson Waterworks Meter and Automation Group for as-needed water meter installation and replacement services.
Mr. Mayor, we don't know that you need a staff presentation on this. You have a staff report. This is on current business because of the dollar item.
Okay, any questions or comments from staff? Seeing none, open it up for public comment. Anybody want to comment on this item on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for motion.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the floor for approval of the item. Please vote.
The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
We move on to item number 14. This is the Marina Park project, bid package number 4, award of contract for the Marina docks. Staff?
So I'll offer the same thought that we could do a presentation on this if you'd like. Dave's prepared to go. This is phase 4, bid package 4 of the Marina Park project. It's a $2.9 million authorization for the docks.
Okay, does anyone want to have a staff report? Okay, I don't think we need one. Any council comments? I see a request to speak here. Councilmember Duffy.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, I would like to move to reconsider the design and materials of the docks. The current design we're being asked to pay for is vastly overbuilt for the application and location. The docks will sit in a waterway protected from the prevailing winds and storms from the south, with a minimal impact from Santa Ana's due to the location of Lido Island. During the job walk back in December 18th, 2014, it was announced that only concrete docks would be considered. Therefore, half the bidders left the site and only those who would build concrete docks remained. Bellingham was chosen, is a maker of large commercial marinas and piers, not small marinas like this one. The pilings alone are a huge expense due to their oversized specs. There is a significant cost to Bellingham just to stage the barge in our harbor that will set the pilings and hoist the docks into the water. Our local builders can get away with a fraction of that cost by simply launching docks at the launch ramp and towing them into place. Their piles are set with a significantly smaller barge crane system. And another point, local builders of docks made from other materials who have been making safe, strong, and attractive docks for over 50 years were not even considered. And I believe these docks could be re-engineered to fit better the application and cause a significant savings of up to 30%. Lastly, if we proceed to choose a new construction method, I believe it could be done without causing a delay to the opening of the marina, assuming our engineering staff is cooperative. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, do you want to speak to your second?
I'd love to. You know, I kind of stayed out of the Marina Park project, even though, well, basically because it's, as Mr. Kiff said, it's a half-baked cake. And by the time you get in there, reevaluate it, do some value engineering, stop the construction, and then come out with a more reasonable design, you've spent all your savings. But this is a contract that isn't going to affect the critical path of the project. I don't think we need to have a Taj Mahal in the dock system. We already have it on the park itself. So I would love to have the staff come back to us with a design build options with, fiberglass and wood and some other alternatives besides concrete. Concrete doesn't float very well, so I don't know why it makes a good dock. But I would like to see an alternative to this. And even if the docks end up being a couple of months late, which I don't think they would, but if they did, compared to the opening of the rest of the park, I don't think that would be a big problem. And I think the savings could be substantial. So that's why I'm with Mr. Duffy on this.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Petros.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Councilmember Curry.
Well, what exactly will this do to the schedule for the project and its cost and its coordination with the other construction activity going on there?
Thank you. Through the mayor. This will probably have some impact. Again, docks are engineered for a certain way. The design decision to go concrete was made way back when. We have tried and true on this. There are other options. There's wood docks and there's fiberglass docks. We evaluated that back then and chose that concrete would be the way to go at this particular marina. You're looking at probably a redesign of the dock itself because they are designed based on the type of material. And you would probably have a delay, and then you'd have to go to bid and order it again. Right now, we're looking at, if we go with this concrete award, we will probably be done right around 1st of October. We're looking to open the park in December. So we would probably end up, my guess is we'd be opening the park without the docks in place. And again, I don't know what kind of savings we would be. Again, this is a concrete product. I don't know if we could, we've talked to Bellingham and some of the others, a wood product would probably be more expensive. I don't know where fiberglass is. That's a big system there for fiberglass docks, but.
Well, so then we would still be in construction after we'd open the park. We'd have kids there at the beach, and we'd have people there using maybe the sailing center, and would have people in there trying to build docks around them. Is that what we'd have?
Yes, and we'd probably delay use of the sailing center because a lot of it has to do with these docks. A lot of their operations are on the docks themselves. I have a quick picture if you want to see how that affected. But
Well, I would just say to my colleagues here, there's a time and a place to deal with these issues. That can make them effective and can add value to the process. And there's other times when it just screws it up. Now, in the past 3 weeks, we've passed minutes that woefully did not reflect what happened, approving a plan which is now morphed into 9 plans. God only knows what we're doing on fire rings. We've managed to appoint somebody who was an eligible office to a city commission because we didn't pay attention to the process, and we're pulling stuff out of the air up here. And we haven't even gotten to the fee discussion later today. So at some point in time, my friends, we've got to quit making this stuff up here at the DS and throwing stuff out there for staff because it's messing up the way that the city is working. It's messing up our processes, and it's going to delay this project in a very significant way, contrary to my colleagues' comments over here that it's not going to delay it. So I appreciate, by the way, the expertise that Mr. Duffield brings to this and the opportunity to make improvements as we go along. But the time to do that is not when the items come in here for action. It's in the design process earlier.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Question of staff. Dave, is there a problem with putting this out in a design build form, and wouldn't we save time by doing that? We already have the configuration established. We already have the specs established. So both a fiberglass and a wood dock system could be a design build system?
generally, you could save some time if you start a design versus a design bid build. We're way into that. We've got all the permits pulled for this. We've got the designs done. So you're going to end up losing time. You're going to have to, one, find a design build contract. We'll have to go out on a spec on that. Two, they're going to have to design a product, run it through the building department, get it plan checked through fire. These are complex docks. They have fire systems on it, vacuum sewer systems on it, water, electrical. So we're going to need building permits on that. From there, they can go and construct it. I don't think at this point, because we're so far in the line, that we're actually going to make the schedule. That would be my concern. Are we going to save money? I don't know. We have a very efficient project here. I can go through the project budget. So far to date, we are way under budget. We're still running ahead on that. I'm not convinced that we're going to save money. We've got a good bid. And again, I apologize that this bid looks like it's over the engineer's estimate. By the way, it's a correction. It's 23%, not 30%. But we have problems with the engineer's estimate too. And it doesn't necessarily mean we didn't get a good bid. It just means the engineer was off in his estimate. So there are times when design build can be just as expensive or more, because you build in this case, when you do a design bid build, we take the risk by holding the contingency. Typically on a CM at risk or design build, they build that contingency in their cost because they know they might be hit with it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's saying that the process was bad. We're saying that it's over-designed and that we're paying way too much for what we need.
And that's a good question, although that goes back to the root of, there was a design committee on this that chose they wanted a high-level visitor serving dock. They wanted certain, for instance, on this picture, if you look up here, we have float-offs where the rec folks can actually get the sabots and stuff in and out of the water very easy. We've got a lot of stacking on there. We've got dinghy racks on this layer. We've got large ADA ramps. There are a lot of custom features in this, but that was part of the design of this visiting serving marina. It was built at a scale to attract a certain level, along with a very high-end recreational program that, if we could go into details, Laura's here tonight, could talk about that. But again, if you want to scale this down, that is a big decision, but it'll save some costs maybe to scale it down, but we will get delayed also.
I don't think I'm talking about scaling it down. I'm thinking of alternative design and getting rid of the concrete. So you'd keep the same configuration, but you would design it, and I would do design build, and you would save a lot of money. It's an over-design. It's a Taj Mahal, just like the whole entire park is. And this is an add-on at the end that we have an opportunity to put some cost savings into. So, you know, contrary to the unicorns flying around the building like Mr. Curry likes to refer to, a la Mr. Petros, this is not that scenario. We are looking at a cost savings of maybe $2 million.
Mayor?
You've finished, Councilman?
Yes, thanks.
Nothing. Go ahead.
I didn't just come up with this idea, and I think $2 million savings is too much, but I went to the local builder who's been around for many, many years and asked him about it. And that's how I asked two of them about it. And the idea of having a Rolls-Royce dock in a situation like this where there's no wave activity whatsoever, virtually none, and having it built in such a manner, it's akin to the same dock that was built at the end of the Rhine Channel that sees no wave activity or wind. That dock is far overbuilt. So I sadly was not here. I've been elected to look at things and try to save money, and I have a fellow that's been probably built 80% of all the docks in the harbor in the last 35 years tell me that he could do this for less money and he could do it in time. Now, I don't care if he gets the bid. It obviously has to go out to bid. I needed to go somewhere to ask this because, sadly, our engineering staff just said, we're not even going to pursue any other alternative method. We're just going concrete. And concrete has real issues. There's no way to repair it. So down the road, when there is an issue, you cannot repair it. You have to remove it and replace it. And inherently, concrete doesn't move, and docks move, and consequently they crack. And if you look at concrete docks in a hole, they end up in a bad way. So that was my motivation. I wasn't here to try to upset anyone or create a war or anything. I know from listening to these fellows that build all the docks, and no one has died on a dock as a result of a failure, and all of those wonderful things. These guys know how to build docks, and not listening to them, at least talking to them, and just saying we're only going to go concrete, I don't believe is the best process to go through. And so this is not a half-baked idea. This comes from experienced dock builders in our harbor.
Councilmember Petros.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, Mr. Piotr, this is a unicorn, as evidenced by Councilmember Duffield saying your $2 million is out of whack. And I do appreciate your expertise, Councilman Duffield. I will defer to you on this, but I question the timing of this, and for that reason, I will offer a substitute motion, which is the motion as presented to accept those bids, 14 items A through D.
Okay. Any other comments at this time? Okay, we'll open it for public comment. Anyone wants to address the council, please come forward.
Denise Oberman. I am a resident. I'm not going to comment on the merits of the request other than to say that there are new council people that are elected, and one of the key drivers was a concern for the lack of diligent evaluation of projects and expenditures. So I would encourage the council to stop this, what has the look and feel of bickering, and to begin moving forward as one entity. There may be different opinions. The public does not want to hear this type of this type of repartee. We do want some diligent thinking, we want conscientious thinking, and we are going to want and need this thinking going on future issues. I had a member of council just mention a couple of days ago how disappointed he was the Measure Wide impasse because there was at least $50 million that could have been gotten by the Irvine Company that wasn't. Well, the reality is that money wasn't gotten. That was the will of the people not to have over-intensification of development. And so we're going to have to live in a more conservative environment and with a different type of policy than we have in the past. So I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other relative to this project. I do believe the whole thing is over-designed. But be that as it may, I just say the public doesn't want to listen to this. We charge our council with being fiscally responsible and fiscally accountable. And that's everybody. And you guys have a duty to do this and not to just say, I mean, we can say that every project that's on the books is too far along. That's not the case. So I just ask you to try to get above some of the bickering and be responsible. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Michael Glenn, resident of Balboa Peninsula. Maybe too little too late with this suggestion, but I think this would be a good time as they're bringing in dredging equipment to see if we can get some of the problem areas in our harbor dredged as well. Just an idea. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mayor Selich and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. I share the admiration for Councilman Duffield's expertise in this. I think he has an excellent idea. I would, however, interject the question or possibility of whether the Coastal Commission would consider this change to be an immaterial change to the approved permit that they issued for an approved design. Given the very cursory review that they gave of the overall design, I don't think that would be a problem, but I don't think it's a certainty either. The comment I came here to make, though, as I often do, is a comment about transparency, and it's not about the project itself. A year ago, the council then sitting, where you are sitting today, was debating the previous package number 3 for Marina Park, and at that time, former Mayor and Councilman Henn mentioned that the public could feel secure because there was a 3-council-member working group that was overseeing the development of Marina Park. I do not know how that 3-member working group came into existence. It apparently was not the so-called building ad hoc committee that the council one time had. So my question for the clarification of the public is whether such a working group still exists, and if so, who is on it, and how it was authorized. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Councilman Curry.
Well, just to summate here, staff has told us that this is going to delay the project. Staff has told us that this is likely not to result in cost savings. Mr. Piotr has pulled out $2 million. Mr. Duffield, with more expertise, says that's not a correct number. Staff says there may not be any savings whatsoever. But we do know it's going to delay the project. And fundamentally, it is wrong for us as council people to sit here based on what some guy at the gym or, that we've talked to down the line or in an ex parte way says, here's how you ought to do it. And on that basis, change the entire public process that we followed to get to this point through the competitive bidding process with these proposals. Because in government, process is our most important product. And I will just tell you, for my new colleagues who haven't experienced before, but there's not an investment banker or a construction engineer or a chemical engineer or a trash provider out there who won't tell you that they could do it cheaper, better, faster than the guy who ultimately got hired and has responsibility for doing it. That's just the way they are. So I think we ought to trust staff. We ought to keep this project on schedule. We ought to deliver our promise to the people to make this park what it can be, what it should be, and when it should be delivered.
Okay. I'm going to support the substitute motion. I did ask questions of staff and the consultant working with staff on the concrete dock, and The information that was brought back to me is that all the public marinas that are being constructed now are being constructed with concrete docks. The marinas that are going in Marina Del Rey, the Alamitos Bay rebuild all concrete docks, that's the standard for public marinas. And the consultant didn't talk about fiberglass docks, but certainly the wooden docks, that there would not be any cost savings in coming up with the wooden dock solution. So I'll be supporting the substitute motion. Any other comments from council? Okay, we'll call for the vote, please.
With council members Piotr, Duffield, and Muldoon voting no, the motion carries 4-3.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 15, the Bay Avenue pavement reconstruction award of contract.
I have a point of order. Substitute motion, now we have to vote on it as the main motion? Wasn't that a vote to substitute?
No, the substitute motion takes priority, so we don't have to vote on the main motion.
Okay.
And just for clarification, did everybody know what they're voting on? I just want to make sure that we don't have issues later. Oh.
No, the motion was to approve the staff recommendations A, B, C, and D. Approve the project drawings and specification, award contract 3897D, establish a contingency fund of $293,739, and approve a budget amendment number 15BA-029. Anybody have any disagreement that was the motion? Does that suffice, Mr. Harp?
Yeah, I just want to make sure no one thought they were just voting to whether to vote on the substitute motion or not. But
Okay.
I agree that was the substitute motion.
Please note, there's no Elvis in that one.
Pardon me?
There's no Elvis in that one.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that clarification. Okay, on to item number 15, the Bay Avenue pavement reconstruction award of contract 5580.
We'll try this once again. This may be a short item. It's a large dollar item associated with repaving Bay Avenue. And we have a staff report if you'd like to hear it.
Okay, any need for a staff report? Seeing none, any questions from council? Open it for public comment. Seeing no public comment, bring it back for a motion. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, call for the vote.
The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Okay, the next item is item 16, residential piers, adjusting the rental calculation and approving a revised model permit template. I'm going to be recusing myself on this item because I own a residential pier. And with that, I will turn the chair over to Mayor Pro Tem Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Dixon, I too would recuse as I lease a marina.
Okay.
So Mayor Pro Tem Dixon will have a staff report. Chris Miller is going to lead that.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Dixon. This evening, we're going to review what the council directed us to do at the study session on January 27th. So I've got a few slides here, but I'm going to go through them in detail. This just reminds everybody that where our residential piers are located in the harbor, with the various colors denoting whether they're city, county, or privately owned. Let's tackle the easy one first. We made some very minor adjustments to the pier permit, and this is not to be read here, but this is what our current pier permit looks like. And then on this slide, this is what our proposed revision looks like, and I've just called out the two minor revisions on the left-hand side of the screen, signifying that in number 3, we simplified the payment of the rent language, just made it easier to swallow is really all we did. And in number 7, we added the property right protection. which was something that the council wanted. And besides that, the pier permit is still a one-page simplified permit. Moving on, reminding the council that we have 882 residential piers and other piers over county and private waterways. This just goes over the footprint of the piers that are not used, but these are not changing. The proposed not changing. It's changing. So this is an example of single finger piers, different configurations, some smaller, really small configurations of piers. These are not changing. This slide and the next few slides speak to the U-shaped piers. And I have many details about calculations and statistics coming up. But this slide gives an overview on one particular pier as an example. This is at 215 Violeta Sud. And as you can see on the left-hand screen, it gives you two different scenarios. The first scenario is if you charged for the inside of the interior U and you were to pay 50 cents per square foot, you would be paying at the end of the phase-in $1,080. Conversely, if you paid 0.525 cents per square foot, which is what our current plan is, that you would be paying $1,134. There's a difference there. Conversely, also, there is, if you take out the inside of the U, it shows the comparisons there of what you would pay at full phase-in. You'd be paying at our current rate structure at 525 cents per square foot. It'd be $521 versus $496. Some statistics here that I think are important to note before we go into the next slides. We have 882 total piers, but we have 807 physical piers, and I'm going to explain why we have that. But that primarily is because there are many shared piers out there. People have two U's put together, and I call that a W. And so that would be a shared pier. That's why we have fewer physical piers than pier permits. We have some that are shared only. That's the 133. And then we have some that are shared and rental piers. So we broke this down into many different layers. This just shows the council what I mean by shared. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can have I wouldn't call it a single finger. I guess technically it might be, but it's a long dock that's parallel to the bulkhead, and that's shared by 4 of the cannery lofts, as you can see there. And then on the right-hand side, this is a typical shared pier on North Bay front that has 2 U's, hence the W. Now we get into some math and some calculations just to draw some analysis of to help the council make their decision this evening. If we were only to focus on the U-shaped piers, nothing else, just the U-shaped piers, and we included the area that had the water, at the 525 rate, which is our current rate, that cost would be $241,000. If we reduce that to the 50 cents per square foot, we'd be at $229 with a difference of $11,400. And these are just some statistics next. The total square foot of just the U-shaped docks are 460,000 square feet. The average pier size, and I think this is important, is almost 1,800 square feet. And there's there's 309 permits that are U-shaped, and there's 257 piers. Now that's a lot of information, but hopefully this next point will bring it into context. Of the U-shaped piers with the water area removed. So I did the same analysis there, and so this slide gives a kind of 4 scenarios of with the U charging at both rates and without the U charging at both rates. Some important things to note on this would be the total square foot, the average pier size with the U is it goes from 1792 and it drops down to 966. That's about half. So it reduces the average square footage by half. Now the next conclusion or the next analysis I did is this box on the right, which takes our current plan, which is charging for the inside of the U at 525, and compares that or subtracts that, or then you would subtract not charging for the U at 50 cents a square foot. And so the delta there, only for the U-shaped floats, is $117,000. I'm going to do an overall comparison in just a minute. This is a lot of information. Do you have any questions on this particular slide? I'll move on. Now I'm going to talk about the other side of the equation, which really the council didn't give staff any direction, but I thought I would include it just to provide context. And then I'll summarize it in the very next slide. In 2000, this basically are the same statistics covering the single finger floats. So as you can see, if you just reduce the rate from 0.525 to 0.5 per square foot, it's a delta of about $6,000. So this last set of slides summarizes both the U-shape and the single finger floats into one big number. If you look at all the piers and you charge the current 525, it's $372,000 at full phase-in. If you reduce the rate by 2.5 cents, that number becomes $354,000, which means a delta of $17,000. Now I will subtract out the U, and those numbers are reflected there. There's a difference of $12,000 with subtracting out the U with the current rate and the proposed rate. You can look at the average pier size. Now this is with U's and single fingers. This is the entire harbor. The average pier size is 883 square feet, which is this top number here. That's with the U. When you subtract the U, your average pier size is about 616 square feet. And then the delta, the overall delta between the current fee for charging, the current fee at 52.5 cents per square foot, charging for the inside of the U versus 50 cents per square foot without charging inside of the U, that delta is $125,000. Now, I need to state that this number is a corrected number from the staff report. Upon further analysis and looking at this and considering the shared piers, which kind of threw me at least, for a loop, and that's what equates for that delta in the staff report in the, I think it was 170, 179, I believe. So there's a difference there, and I wasn't accounting for the shared pier component. So this difference right here, this is the 3 o'clock this afternoon crunching of numbers that we've been working on all day. This is the final number difference. And that is my last slide. I'd be happy to keep this on the board and answer any questions that you have.
Any questions? Mr. Muldoon.
You beat me to it. I didn't mean to push a button.
I saw you.
Sure. I think I'm going to ask these actually of the lawyer, Mr. Torres, because my concerns are more legal-based. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Torres, what is the governing legislation that covers our duties to the harbor?
Mr. Muldoon, there's a few items. One would be the Beacon Bay Bill, which is the legislative tidelands grant from the California legislature to the city, which actually gave us the tidelands. And as well as the Newport Beach Municipal Code also has some regulations over the tidelands.
Does the Beacon Bay Bill contain language that discusses our duties and how those duties are revoked by the State Land Commission?
It does.
Do you have that in front of you by chance?
I don't, but I can find that. Yeah, I have that now, Mr. Muldoon.
Could you please take us briefly through the procedures it would take to revoke our State Lands Commission trustee status?
Okay.
Could you take us just through the quick? I know.
Oh,
there are a
I'm
couple.
sorry. I didn't understand. Yes, so it's a multi-step process. If the question is, how would the State Lands Commission actually step in and revoke our Tidelands grant or somehow take that away from us, it would first involve a complaint to the Attorney General. The Attorney General would then have to notify the Secretary of the Senate as well as the Assembly. There would have to be a hearing where the State Lands Commission would present evidence of somehow the city not following through on its obligations under the Tidelands grant. The city would have an opportunity to respond. Based on the outcome of that hearing, if they still weren't satisfied, the Attorney General could then file a legal action in Superior Court here in Orange County, and then it would ultimately be decided by a judge.
So it sounds like it's not just based on staff feelings, how they wake up in the morning, or how we do something of the State Lands Commission. There's a procedural legal process.
There is a procedure outlined within the Tidelands grant.
But just in case it were up to staff, has the city been in contact with the State Lands Commission?
Yes, staff has been in contact with the State Lands Commission.
And does the State Lands Commission keep a record of how trustee jurisdictions are governed regarding whether or not they charge for the U?
There was actually a conversation the city manager had with the State Lands Commission. I was on that call as well. My understanding is they don't have a record of how other jurisdictions charge for the U or if they include it or not.
Do they have a preference?
They expressed a slight preference to actually including the U within the calculation because that would maximize the amount of revenue to the Tidelands Fund.
But do they permit not charging for the U?
The decision to charge for the U is ultimately up to the City Council. So the City Council is charged with identifying what the fair market value rent will be for the Tidelands, and that has to be based in part at least upon an appraisal. And that 50-cent number that's up there right now is actually from an appraisal that was conducted by the city in 2012. And then ultimately it's to the City Council's discretion to determine what property is being used by a permittee and whether it includes the U or excludes the U. That's the decision to the City Council.
So they defer to the city, essentially. In our case, to the city.
Under the Tidelands grant, the City Council administers the Tidelands within the city, so it is the discretion of the City Council.
Are there other jurisdictions in the state of California that do not charge for the U? That have trustee status?
I know of at least one. I mean, Oceanside, I believe, does not charge for the interior of the U, but I haven't done any type of, I don't know, maybe Chris Miller or someone else would know more, but I only know of at least one.
But essentially, the State's Land Commission doesn't even care enough to record it themselves.
I wouldn't phrase it that way, but as far as I know, the State Lands Commission doesn't have a record of who includes the U and who excludes the U.
Did they indicate, so you said they indicated no strong preference either way, but they tend to prefer to go on the revenue generating side. Let's switch quickly to the finger docks. And Mr. Miller did touch on this. Right now, there is no charge for any finger docks surrounding water other than the water that's directly above the physical structure. Is that correct?
That's correct. I refer to that as the footprint of the float. Uh-huh.
That makes sense. And how many Newport Beach residential pier permittees have U-shaped docks in the harbor again, roughly?
I'd have to just...
I think it's 308.
U-shaped.
309?
I say 308. Total pier permits with U-shaped slips, 309.
Okay. Switching gears really quickly back to the legal concept again. Those people who paid for the surface area above the water, which is the U, are they able to exclude fishermen or kayaks that would be in that U but not touching the dock, Mr. Torres?
Currently, right now, as far in the interior of the U,
yes.
No, I'm not aware of anything that would prevent them from excluding, say, if a fishing line went under or into the U right now. No.
Because essentially, you cannot exclude someone from the public use of waterways.
Yes.
Well, I only mention it because there is a misnomer that you cannot, if we were not to charge for the U-shape, that means that all of a sudden they lose their right to exclude. But as I understand the law, there is no such right, even if you are paying for that water. I believe this is an equitable issue. It's unfair, and it creates a disproportionate large amount of funds to be used to pay for water that you cannot even have the exclusive use for, and is considered to be unfair in other applications that this council has already decided to reduce the square footage in the finger scenario, the finger dock scenario. Lastly, do you have a sense of any complaints people have lodged specifically regarding not being able to exclude others from their U-shape that were not docked. And this is actually a Chris Miller question. Have you heard complaints or people complaining about lines or kayaks that are in the center of their U?
I've heard a couple people have complained to me about people using the tidelands. I just can't remember if they had a U-shaped dock or not, but they've said near their dock they have people in inflatable, in small inflatable tubes where they fish from, and their headlights get in their windows at night.
Mm-hmm. Oh, at evening. All right. Well, I think that covers my questions for now. Thank you.
Any other questions? No questions. Let's turn, excuse me, over to the public. Any comments, please?
My name is Sarah Abraham. I live at 908 West Bay Avenue. I would respectfully appreciate the reduction in the U-shaped docks. We have a U-shaped dock, and it's the fact that a home with a finger dock could accept a boat that is wider and or longer than a U-shaped dock. So I feel as though the fairness is to pay for the physical dock and not pay for the water within the U-shape that's not being used. We have had very funny incidents about people fishing within our U-shape or having a cocktail at the end of our, tying to the dock and other things. And it's okay, but it would be nice if we had our annual dock fee reduced. We'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Next.
Hi, Michael Glenn, resident of Balboa Peninsula. I think everybody up there is pretty much self-identified as a conservative, also self-identified as supporting Prop 13, which prevents people from taxing property value. There is a strong drive to identify the dock tax as a fee rather than a tax. I don't like splitting hairs on this. It's really annoying. I think everybody's in the same boat with that, but this is critical. A tax is something where you receive the direct benefit for it. If I were to ask you to inspect this piece of paper and you charged me $100 and you said, okay, Mike, looks good, and that's what it cost you to do that, that is a fee. If you said, okay, Mike, we're going to take your $100 and then we're going to repair that chair over there, that is a tax because it goes to the public good. Now, I have in my hand from the Orange County Assessor a document that says docks are a piece of property value. The Orange County Assessor, as you know, is somebody, it's the entity that sets property value. So they are a good authority on this. What we have here is a tax on a dock that goes to the General Harbor Fund. It is not going to the dock. It is not a fee. This is a tax. This is a tax, according to the Orange County Assessor, on property value. This is a tax on property value, according to the Orange County Assessor, without a public vote. This is a violation of Prop 13.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
May I ask the city attorney to comment on this proper analysis on Prop 13?
Well, it's actually, in our opinion, it's rent.
Let me elaborate further. Does Proposition 13 have any relevance here, as was mentioned by Mr. Glenn?
No, in our opinion, it doesn't have any relevance at all. In essence, our opinion is that, the dock is occupying tidelands, and what is being paid is rent for occupying the space on the tidelands.
Next,
yes, good evening, Honorable Council members and Mayor Pro Tem Diane Dixon. My name is George Schroeder. I want to thank Council Member Kevin Muldoon for asking the questions he answered. It helped clarify this for me. I think most of you would self-identify as reasonable, intelligent, and fair-minded people. After the questions and answers from Councilman Muldoon, I can't think of any rational reason to make bayfront property owners pay for the water inside of their U. There was only one reason, because the people who get that money like to get as much as they can. So please take it from them. Okay, but there is no rational or fair reason. I mean, if you're going to charge for that water, you should charge for the water outside of the finger. I mean, honestly. So, I mean, after hearing this, I would be surprised why anybody would support charging for inside of the U. Thank you very much.
Any other comments from the public? Let's bring it back.
I have one.
Oh, certainly.
Thank you, Council. My name is Bob McCaffrey. I live at 1410 South Bayfront. The dock tax was an ill-advised and unnecessary money grab by the prior city council. Ironically, it lit a fire in the community that has been smoldering for years. The new faces sitting on the dais are the result of the refreshing result. I support the work of Councilwoman Doon and others in bringing this chapter of the city to conclusion. Our goals are straightforward: preserve our property right, protect our peers from government seizure, and pay our fair share. Nothing more. As harbor residents and boat owners, we already pay layers of taxes that should be used to maintain and improve the harbor. I have noticed a disturbing trend by the prior city council that is rearing its head during this dock discussion. Some on prior council seem to enjoy inviting two powerful state agencies into our city affairs by banning wood fire rings. So much for the Republican ideal of local government. Now we have the same councilman that brought the Coastal Commission in the Air Quality Management District to our beaches, inviting the state lands to regulate Newport Harbor. Rolling out the welcome mat for Sacramento bureaucrats is a bad idea. In 1978, the California legislature said we could manage Newport Harbor better than the state. I think they were correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments? Yes. Oh, thank you. The public hearing almost was going to be close.
Good evening, Council. I'm Brad Avery, and I have no opinion about the costs involved and how it's set up, other than to say that it makes it less clear if you don't charge for inside the U. And I'm not advocating that we, I think it would be better if you got the rates wherever you wanted them, wherever we felt they should be, which is probably not where they are now. But we charged for the U to make it clear the major reason anybody has the piers and the floats is to hold a boat in the middle of the U. And that we can say, sure, someone can go in there and paddle their kayak around. But when that boat comes back, if they don't leave that water at the demand of of the person that is running that or owning that spot as the permit, the harbor department will come and ask them to leave, I would think, although they may not have the right to do that. So when we look up and down the harbor, what people are really after is a place to berth their boats. And in strict nautical language, the dock is actually the open water, and the float is the structure that's built on the water to accommodate the boat in the dock. I know that sounds a little confusing, but to keep it all straight, I think it's better if the rates, whatever rate you decide, is the rate you decide, because what you're really talking about is a place for this person to keep a boat. That's what everybody's after. The floats are something else entirely. I mean, they're just there to hold the boat and to give people access to go down the dock to the boat. But we're really providing, and what people really want, is this space of water that is public tidelands, and that really, you could say, yes, anybody could go in that water, but if we look up and down the harbor, 99.9% of the time, the boats are sitting on top of that tidelands, and it's not available to anybody else. And if a kayak goes in there and is fishing and that boat owner wants to leave, I think the kayak is going to have to leave unless, I guess, somebody comes and really pushes their rights to be in that water. So it just makes it less clear about whose water it is. And I think it makes it difficult for a homeowner who is paying their fee to defend that water right there if we take it out and we just say, okay, they're not paying for it. So I'm not advocating raising the rent. I'm not anything. It's more about understanding what we're really after here. And that's a place to berth our boats. And a permit, a square footage permit, should include all of that, I believe. So, but the rate can be wherever you want it to be. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments?
Yes, City Council, my name is Lee Sutherland, and live at 1401 North Bayfront. I guess I do not, it's real simple. I don't understand why there's the exclusion of the U-shape. I don't, and maybe somebody could answer that.
Lee,
that's the main place that you put a boat.
Lee, you don't understand why there's an exclusion or inclusion?
An exclusion of the U-shaped. And that's all I have to say. Maybe somebody
Thank you.
can talk about it.
Does anybody want to answer?
Yeah, I feel like I should, because I think Mr. Avery is way off base. And I think this gentleman, his confusion is quite understandable. In no rights can anyone exclude or own water. You just can't do it because it belongs to the people. However, you can have exclusive use to a dock that's above water, and only that dock. Now, whether or not in practical reality someone can ask you to get out of the U, whether you're going to be an inconsiderate person and try to keep your line there even though a boat's trying to come in, I guess that's a question we can talk about like angels dancing on the pinhead. But at the end of the day, you cannot charge someone for something that they cannot have exclusive right to. No one is entitled to have the right. Now, we can charge more square circumference. We have that ability to. It doesn't mean we should. And that's what I'm looking at my council for. It's very easy to say, oh, hey, those other guys, those other 300 guys, have them pay more. But it's also incredibly unfair. It's not your dock. It's not your bill. It's not how others are treated, so why would we choose this select few and charge them for something that others don't get charged for? Thank you.
Any other council comments?
Yes, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I would actually like to thank my colleague, Councilman Muldoon, for his comments. It clarified in my mind a great deal. I think that we need to reflect on the notion that this all, or at least when I was sitting in the audience, not yet a council person, and listening to the genesis of this, it was all in the context of the Pavley bill. That we had this mandate to be consistent with the Pavley bill, and yet that was simply a way to backfill the state coffers during recession. I don't know that the rationale behind that for the harbor is necessarily correct, other than the fact that State Lands has ultimate authority. But it was very enlightening to hear just what it would take for State Lands to come in and exercise that authority, an act literally of our state legislature. To the question of the interior of the U, That logic to me, Mr. Muldoon, seems to fit in line with the projection of the finger docks. We don't say, we took out the buffer when we revisited the fees the second time when I was a council member. And the thought was that the boat's not always there adjacent to the finger dock. I can enjoy that water in my kayak as a fisherman or whatever. Conversely, the logic that we should retain some area like a buffer or the interior of the U, to me says that we should then charge the shadow of the vessel wherever it goes in the harbor. And that doesn't seem to sit right with me either, because that is the projection of the U. And therefore, wherever it goes, you charge the fee for it. So I appreciate your comments, Mr. Muldoon, and I will be supporting the action as it's proposed.
Thank you. Any comments? All right, Mr.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. You know, the most immortal words coming out of Watergate were not President Nixon saying, "I am not a crook," but FBI agent Mark Felt saying, "Follow the money." So let's just do that here. Let's follow the money on this transaction. I asked the city manager to have some charts from our last PowerPoint presentation from 2 weeks ago ready to go. So can we pull up the chart that shows the, just so everybody's familiar, the ramp up of the rate over time, this chart here? We're not quite there yet. While we're doing that, keep in mind that what we're talking about here is a process that affects, they're not numbered, it's this page, 882 people, 884 people. That's the number of people who have a permit. There you go, right there. So nobody really bothers to remember the 400 people who were determined not to be on public lands and went from paying $100 a year to paying $0 as a result of the previous council's action. Now, you should see here, this fee has been ramped up from 12.9 cents per square foot to 52.5 cents per square foot. And we're proposing as a fee schedule to ramp it down to 50 cents a square foot as the maximum. So that's a reduction of 4.7%. Call it 5% if you want to. Let's go to the next chart that shows that chart there. So here's the categorization of who has got a permit and where they fall in terms of the square footage that they have. And what you see is if you go to the first categories there beginning at 800 to 1,000 square feet, I think if you add that up, maybe it's one more category, and then you average them, you end up with an average of average fee of $367.50. It's actually lower than that if we were to weigh these numbers for how many people were in each category. And if you take a 4.7% reduction of that, that means that each of those people, 71% of the people subject to this fee, are going to get an average savings of $18.38 annually. That's what it's worth. Now, if you're a little bit bigger dock, you'll get a little bit more. If you're one of these people on a much smaller dock, which 500 people are, you'll get substantially less annually than that. And if you have a U, you'll get substantially more than the people who don't have a U. But of the 882 people, as we see, only 306 have a U. So 2/3 of the people do not and will not get the benefit from that savings. So if you take that $18.38 and multiply it by the 626 dock owners, they're splitting $11,505 of savings. So that sort of begs the question, where is that other $110,000 going? Now, 2 weeks ago, it was $150,000 because we estimated the cost of this to be $179,000 instead of $125,000. Frankly, I'm not sure we actually know how much this is going to cost the city and the taxpayers, but knowing what we're doing doesn't seem to stop us on some of these decisions, so we're pressing ahead. who's actually going to get that other $100 and some thousand worth of money? Well, it's these very small group of people, as you can see down at the bottom of the page, that have large docks or have large U's or have a large amount of boats on their dock. And these are the same people that Mr. McCafferty leads, who sponsored the Residents for Reform and sponsored the Stop the Dock tax. And just like at the racetrack with their winning tickets, they're here to cash them in tonight for public funds. Tom Larkin had 19 boats on his dock. Mr. McCafferty, do we have a picture of Mr. McCafferty's dock? I asked to see if we had that handy. Has 9 boats tied up on his dock. So this is going to benefit a very, very small group of people in a very, very big way. And everybody else is going to split about $11,000, going to get about $18 a year in savings. Now, is that really good public policy? People will say, well, it's only $125,000 total. What could that buy? Well, that's enough to pay for a police officer on the peninsula. I think we're going to hear from some of our colleagues that did like to see us expand the police on the peninsula. That's enough to pay for a police officer. That's enough to pay for debt service on $2 million of seawall improvements on Balboa Island and throughout the harbor where we need to make them desperately because of the sea level issue. And we pay for them out of this source. We don't pay for our 4th of July efforts out of the Tidelands funds, but this would pay for our 4th of July parade for several years and for the other efforts that we make on the peninsula to make it a safer place to live. Improvements that benefit tens of thousands of people, not 30 or 40 or 50, who benefit disproportionately from the way that this has been set up using this U strategy. And do we really want to have a policy where we think it's tacitly okay for people to be able to drive in and out of your dock in the U because we've deemed it to be public and not yours? I think when you think about that, that's not really good public policy. So let's follow the money. Let's recognize that these are public funds, that we have a trust under the law. And I don't, for 1 minute, invite these state bureaucrats to come in and mess with our city. But they do it because that's what they do. And if we think for 1 minute that the State Lands Commission is not going to be tempted to come to Republican Newport Beach and try and get some money that they can take and spend someplace else because we give them the opportunity to, that they won't take it, I think we're sadly mistaken. So let us remember that these are public funds. This is a trust. Let's follow the money. Let's use the money appropriately in the harbor for the benefit of all of the citizens of our community, and not just the privileged few who, through their campaign contributions, believe that they can dictate policy. And these guys aren't the only ones. I mean, look at the court filings. The Friends of the Fire Rings are looking to shake down the taxpayers for money, too. That's what this is all about.
Any other comments?
Sure,
Mr.
I'll jump
Piotr.
in. You know, Mr. Curry, you sit there and, first of all, you accuse people of buying votes, which I resent entirely. But let's ignore that for a minute. The public funds that you're talking about aren't coming in yet, right? Those don't come in until 2017. So it's not like you're taking $125,000 out of the Treasury. You're just not going to put it in by overtaxing what you did 2 years ago. So we're correcting an error that you and the previous council made. And so, okay, I understand you're upset about it. But, Ms. Mayor, I'd like to
Well, if I could just respond to that.
make a motion, and maybe you can discuss it during the motion. I'd like to propose staff recommendation, adopt the resolution of the City Council of Newport Beach adjusting the rental calculation and approving revised model permit template for residential piers located upon tidelands.
Is there a second?
I have to make a substitute motion, Scott, just to clarify something. Could you withdraw the motion so I can make
Oh, I'd be glad to.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Just to add something extra that's very important that we're looking to protect, which is a settlement agreement. If you had it my way, I'd repeal this whole thing, Mr. Curry. I move to approve the residential pier permit resolution and to add language to the residential tidelands permit, verifying the settlement agreement and protections. It's basically in addition to what you artfully put in the current resolution.
I think probably the clearest way to frame it is you're moving staff's recommended item, which includes everything that's written there.
That's
because
correct.
that includes
Yes,
that.
thank you, Council.
All right.
And I'll second that.
Thank you.
Call for the comment?
Well, just to comment on Mr. Piotr's motion, you know, Mr. Piotr, I would normally be pretty restrained about making such a charge like that, except for the fact that Bob's taken out full-page ads in the newspaper saying that he's coming down here to watch the city council, make sure they vote the way he tells them to. Otherwise, I don't think I would have said that. But since it's put it in the paper and he's here tonight, I thought it was worth mentioning. And you continue to repeat this tax claim, and I know it's good political rhetoric, but I think staff has just explained to you that it's false rhetoric. And the more that we continue to use false rhetoric with the community in the way that you do, the less responsible we're going to be in making decisions. I go back to the past 3 weeks. Under your leadership, we've tried to change the invocation policy. We've bungled the fire ring issue. We now have 9, maybe it's 9 by the time the day's over. We may have 12 different plans floating around. We've appointed somebody who was ineligible for office. We've waived our appointments policy in doing so. And now we're willy-nilly here changing this the fee schedule in a way that nobody really knows what it was. It was, $179,000 cost on Thursday. It's $125,000 today. Who knows what it's going to be tomorrow? But, that's how we do business these days.
Shall we call for the vote or any other comments before we call? Let's call for the vote. You'll read it. Thank you. Or no? Okay, we're clear on it.
With Councilmember Curry voting no, the motion carries 4-1.
I have a motion for reconsideration.
Let me wait and invite the mayor
Sure.
back and Councilman Duffield.
All right, because he said he wasn't going to come back.
Not coming back? Okay.
He told me to continue on.
Smart man.
All right.
Wake him up.
Yeah.
You're back in your job.
Get away with me.
Motion for reconsideration. A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the City Council at either this meeting or the previous meeting may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side.
Okay, is there any motion for reconsideration?
Move to adjourn.
Okay, with that, we're adjourned.